So now we're successfully adding messages to our Firestore and we can see those right here. So this is all working. However, what we'd really like to do is every time one of those messages gets added to the Firestore, we want to listen for when that happens and then reflect it by showing it here in the chat window. So this is when we're going to start to explore Firestore's real-time capabilities. So what we'd like to do is set up some kind of listener in our Vue application to listen for changes inside this Firestore. That is when something is added. So then, when something gets added, we take that document or documents and we display them out here in the chat window. Okay? So how are we going to do this? Well, first of all, let's head to our chat component right here because this is where we're going to listen for those changes. And the first thing we'll need to do is import the database from @/firebase/init. Okay, so we have that database reference now. Now, where is a good place to listen for those changes? Well, I think a good place is to listen in the created lifecycle hook when the component is first created. So first of all, let's get a reference to the collection that we want to listen to. So we'll create a local variable, let ref equal, and it's going to be db.collection. And the collection we want to listen to is the messages collection. Okay, so we have that reference now. We want to set up a listener to listen to this collection. How do we do that? Well, it is very, very simple. We can say ref dot on snapshot. So this method right here listens for changes to whatever reference we have, the messages collection in this case. So what happens in Firestore is every time there's a change, every time something's added or deleted or edited, then Firestore can take a snapshot of the current state of the database at that moment in time. And we're saying, okay, well, whenever you take one of those snapshots, we want to receive it back. We're listening for those snapshots. So send us back the snapshot of the database at that moment in time. So we'll take that back as a parameter inside a function, and we can do something with that snapshot. Okay, so when the snapshot comes back, it's a snapshot of the entire database. Now, we're not interested in the entire database, or rather the entire collection. What we want is just the changes that have occurred. And we can get those changes by saying snapshot .doc changes. So first of all, let's log this to the console. We'll say console.log snapshot.doc changes. Hey gang, Sean here with a quick update from the future. Now, as some of you might already be aware, Firebase recently released version 5, and this included a couple of breaking changes when it comes to the code in this course. So one of those changes is this thing right here, doc changes. Now, recently in version 4.12 and 4.13, which is what this course uses, doc changes was a property of snapshot. Now it's a method. So if you're using version 5 of Firebase, you need to change this into a method wherever you see snapshot.docChanges. If you're using version 4.12 or 4.13 like this course, you don't need to do anything. Just if you're using version 5 and above, change this to a method and it will all work the same way. Now, if you're unsure on how to check what version you're using, just go to your package.json file and look at the dependencies and see what they are. So if I now refresh over here and enter the chat again, Mario, enter chat, then in a second we should get, you see these different doc changes right here. So there's 3 at the minute, 0, 1 and 2. So these represent the different messages that we have right here. Now, even though I've not added something right here, when our application first starts up, we're automatically sent that initial snapshot of the collection, right? Because at the minute we've not had any data. So we take that initial snapshot when our application first starts up and we receive each of these documents, right? So it registers those as changes when we first start up the application. And that's a good thing because then what we can do is cycle through these different documents right here and output them to the chat window. So we can do that. And also, whenever we add a new document now, for example, if I say hey, and then press enter, then we get that change as well. Okay, so we can see now we get another document, and in each case you can see added, 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 added. So this is the type of change that has occurred inside the database. So if this was a deletion or an edit, it would say that in the type. So we only want to listen for added events, don't we? So we want to check every time there's a change that this was in fact an added type, because then we want to output it to the chat window over here. So let's go back in the code, and instead of logging these to the console, what we'd like to do is cycle through the doc changes every time we get a snapshot. So that for each change, we can check first of all, is it an added type? If it is, then we'll output it to the template. So first of all, let's say dot for each to cycle through these changes, and we'll refer to each change as a change inside this callback function, and we'll say if, and then in brackets, change.type is equal to added. Then what we'd like to do is output this to the template. Now, what we really want to do is store these in some kind of data when we receive them. So let's create, first of all, a messages property over here, which will be an array. So we'll store all of our different messages when we receive them from the Firestore inside this property over here. So then, if this is of type added, we want to take that document and we want to push it to this array. So we'll say let doc equal change.doc. And you get this property, .doc, on the change to refer to that individual document, okay? So we have that document now. Now we can say this .messages .push to push this onto this messages property right here. So we're going to push on an object, and inside this object we want an ID property, which is on the doc.id from here. Then we also want a name, and that's the name of the person that's created the message. So we'll say doc.data to get the data from that document, .name. And then we also want the content, so that's content, and that is equal to doc.data.content. We also want the timestamp, so we'll say timestamp is doc.data.timestamp. Okay, so every time we receive a change that is of type added, we're taking that document and we're pushing it now to this messages property over here. So to begin with, there'll be 3 changes or 4 changes, depending on how many documents we already have in the Firestore. It's going to grab each one of those and push it to the messages array. And then subsequently, every other change, every time someone adds a new message, will receive that change as well and push that object to the messages array. So then what we like to do is output each of these messages to the template. We want to cycle through these. So then we're outputting the messages right here. There's an li tag for each different message. So the way we can cycle through our data is by using a v4 on this li tag. So v-4 is going to be equal to message in messages. And we need to also bind some data to the key attribute, and that will be equal to the message.id. Remember, we received the ID right here, okay? And we pushed it to that message object over here. So now we're cycling through these different messages. We want to output the correct content. So for the name, we can say message.name. And then for the content, we can say message.content. So we'll do that here, message.content. And then finally for the timestamp, we can say message.timestamp and output that here. Okay, so let's save that and view this in a browser. All right, so already this is looking much better. Now we can see the name, the message, and the timestamp of each different message object in the chat window. And if I add a new one, then we can see it there as well. Okay, cool. So take notice of the order here, right? Hey, how's it going? Hey, hey, hello. Now, if I refresh over here, and I'll need to enter the chat room again, I'll say Mario. Then you might notice that this has changed. The last message before was hello. This time it's not. So it's not ordering these messages in the correct way. So there's an easy way we can sort that out. When we get a reference to a particular collection, we can say we want to order them by something or other. Now, I want to order them by the timestamp. So I could say .order by and timestamp is one of those properties, so I'll pass that in here. So then when we get a reference to this collection, it's going to order all of those by timestamp first of all. So I'm going to save this, and I'm going to refresh over here and enter the chat again, Mario. And now we can see this hello is at the bottom because this is the last one that we added. All right, so it's now ordering these by time. So cool. Now we're setting up a listener to grab the changes from our Firestore whenever they happen using this onSnapshot method. Now at the minute, our timestamps are looking pretty tud. So I'd like to ideally format those into some kind of readable date in the next video.